The call to arms. The bridge of the UEC Stormbreaker hummed with restrained energy as Captain Lyra Chen stood with her hands clasped behind her back. The view screen before her displayed the vast emptiness of space, punctuated by the distant glow of unfamiliar stars. This sector was far from Earth's influence, beyond the boundaries where humans were supposed to venture. Status report. Lyra commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years in command. Lieutenant Commander Ravi Sharma looked up from his console. Scanners are picking up unusual activity in the Neridian settlement, Captain. Energy signatures consistent with large-scale mining operations, but they don't match Neridian technology. Lyra frowned. The Neridians were a peaceful species, physically fragile with translucent skin that revealed the gentle flow of their lavender blood. Their homeworld was a low-gravity paradise of floating islands and gossamer structures. They were philosophers and artists, not miners. "Show me," she ordered. The view screen shifted to reveal a once pristine world now scarred with industrial complexes. Massive excavation equipment tore into the delicate landscape while thin, fragile figures toiled under the watchful eyes of heavily armored overseers. "Magnify," Lyra said, her voice hardening. The image zoomed in on a group of Neridians. Their bodies, evolved for gentle environments and contemplative lives, struggled under loads they were never meant to bear. Several lay motionless on the ground, their translucent skin gray in death. "Those are Consortium enforcers," Security Chief Alexandra Volkov said, pointing to the armored figures. "The Galactic Consortium claims this is a mutual development agreement. They're supposedly helping the Neridians modernize. By working them to death." Lyra's voice was quiet, dangerous. Dr. Maya Wong, the ship's xenobiologist, stepped forward. "The Neridians don't have the physiological capacity for this kind of labor, Captain. Their bone density is 1/3 of ours. Their muscles aren't designed for persistent strain. This is killing them." "How did the Consortium get away with this?" Ravi asked. "Because no one cares about species from low-challenge worlds," Alexandra replied bitterly. "The Consortium controls the Galactic Council. They make the rules." Lyra tapped her fingers against the command rail. Earth and its colonies, worlds of Deathworlders, remained outside the Consortium's control. Humans had evolved on a high-gravity planet with extreme weather, dangerous predators, and constant environmental challenges. When humanity reached the stars, they discovered most sentient species had evolved in far gentler conditions. The Consortium had labeled humans as dangerous and unpredictable. Diplomatic relations remained tense. Intervention in Consortium affairs was expressly forbidden. "We have standing orders not to interfere with Consortium operations," Executive Officer Marcus Okafor reminded her, though his eyes revealed his own disgust at the scene. "Are we picking up any communications?" Lyra asked, ignoring the implied warning. Communications Officer Jun Park adjusted his settings. "There's something breaking through on an emergency frequency. It's weak, but it's there." The bridge speakers crackled with a voice so fragile it seemed to tremble in the air. "To any who hear this, we are dying. The Consortium promised protection, but they are harvesting our world, our people. They take our children when we cannot work fast enough. We have no weapons, no strength to fight. Please, if anyone hears this..." The message dissolved into static. Lyra's jaw tightened. "How many Neridians on the surface?" "Approximately 8,000 in that settlement," Ravi reported. "Sensors indicate similar operations at 11 other locations across the planet." "And Consortium forces?" 200 enforcers at this site. They have a cruiser in orbit, the Relentless. Standard Consortium armament, but nothing that could match the Stormbreaker. Lyra turned to Marcus. "Your thoughts, XO." Marcus met her gaze evenly. "Intervening means violating at least 7 diplomatic protocols. We'd be risking war with the Consortium. And if we do nothing, then we watch another species die because they weren't lucky enough to evolve on a death world." Lyra nodded once. "Battle stations, Prepare landing craft for a rescue operation. Alarms blared as the crew moved with practiced efficiency. Lyra opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. What we are about to do will have consequences. We are about to directly challenge the Galactic Consortium's authority. I won't order anyone to participate in this action. If you have objections, report to your section chief for alternative assignment. She paused, but the only response was the sound of the crew preparing for battle. The Neridians can't fight for themselves. We can. That's what being a Deathworlder means. We survived the worst our world could throw at us. Now we use that strength for those who never had the chance to develop it. Stormbreaker out. The massive warship moved into position. Its stealth systems engaged until they were directly above the largest mining operation. The Consortium cruiser has detected us, Ravi reported. They're powering weapons. Target their propulsion and weapon systems only, Lyra ordered. I want them disabled, not destroyed. The Stormbreaker's main batteries fired with surgical precision. The Consortium cruiser's shields flared and failed under the assault. A second volley left it drifting, powerless. Launch landing craft, security teams, full combat gear. Medical teams prepare to receive casualties. Lyra watched the view screen as the landing craft descended toward the surface. The Consortium enforcers scrambled to mount a defense, but they were unprepared for the fury of human soldiers evolved for warfare. The battle was brief and decisive. Deathworlder troops moved with a speed and strength that the Consortium forces couldn't match. Within 30 minutes, the mining complex was secured. Captain, Jun called out, we're being hailed from the surface. It's Chief Volkov. Alexandra's face appeared on screen, her expression grim but satisfied. Mining complex secured, Captain. Minimal resistance after the initial engagement. We have hundreds of Meridian casualties. Dr. Wong is treating the most critical, but they need specialized care. Behind her, Lyra could see the Neridians. They were even more fragile in reality than they had appeared on screen. Some approached the human soldiers tentatively, their movements graceful despite their injuries. One reached out to touch Alexandra's armor with delicate fingers that seemed too slender to be real. We heard stories, a Neridian voice said, barely audible through the transmission, of beings from harsh worlds. Deathworlders, the Consortium called you. They said you were dangerous, unpredictable. They were right, Alexandra replied. The Neridian's multifaceted eyes reflected the light strangely. They never said you would be kind. Lyra felt something tighten in her chest. Get those people to safety, Chief. We're not done yet. As the first shuttle of rescued Neridians docked with the Stormbreaker, Lyra faced her bridge crew. The Consortium won't let this stand, Marcus warned. We've directly challenged their authority. They'll send a fleet. Let them come, Lyra replied, her voice steady. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we found, what we did. She paused, looking at the stars beyond the view screen. And what we're going to do next. Which is? Ravi asked. Lyra's eyes hardened. We're going to free every Neridian on this planet. Then we're going to find out how many other species the Consortium is exploiting, and we're going to end it. As if in response to her words, the ship's sensors detected multiple warp signatures approaching. Consortium vessels, Jun confirmed. A lot of them. Lyra nodded. Send a message to any UEC ships in range. Tell them the Deathworlders are going to war. Defiance and liberation. 3 days after the initial engagement, the UEC Stormbreaker hung in orbit around Neridia, surrounded by the wreckage of Consortium vessels. They hadn't come alone. The UEC Thunderchild and Imperator had arrived within hours of Lyra's call, followed by a dozen more ships from the outer colonies. The Consortium had not expected such fierce resistance. In the Stormbreaker's conference room, Lyra studied the tactical display with her fellow captains and the Neridian representatives. The Consortium has withdrawn from immediate orbit, Captain Eli Reeves of the Thunderchild reported, but they're regrouping at their regional headquarters in the Vega sector. Our intelligence suggests they're calling in reinforcements from all controlled systems. How many ships? Lyra asked. Potentially hundreds. They control thousands of worlds, Captain Chen. Even with our technological edge, those aren't odds I'd favor. Ilara, the Neridian elder whose message they had intercepted, drifted forward. Her movements, even in the ship's artificial gravity, had an ethereal quality. You have already done more than we dared hope, she said, her voice like wind through crystal. Our people are free for the first time in generations. Perhaps you should return to your territories before the consortium brings its full might against you, and leave them to return once we're gone. Captain Jana Novak of the Imperator shook her head. They'll make an example of your people. We've seen it before. Lyra turned to the intelligence officer who had just entered. Lieutenant Hayes, what did you find in the consortium databases? Lieutenant Emma Hayes activated the main display, revealing a galaxy map dotted with red markers. The Neridians aren't alone, Captain. We've identified 43 species being exploited in similar ways. Low-gravity evolution, minimal defensive capabilities, resource-rich homeworlds. The consortium has a systematic approach to what they call resource maximization. They're farming these worlds, Marcus said flatly, using the native populations as disposable labor until they die out, then moving in permanent consortium settlements. It's genocide, Dr. Wong added. Slow but deliberate. Lyra studied the map, noting the pattern of exploitation spreading outward from the consortium's core worlds. Their headquarters at Vega Prime. That's where the orders come from. Yes, Captain, Hayes confirmed. All operational directives, including the resettlement protocols, originate there. The facility is heavily defended. It's essentially a fortress world. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. We can't fight them all, Captain Reeves said finally. There are too many. We don't have to fight them all, Lyra replied. We just have to cut off the head. She looked at each face around the table. We strike at Vega Prime, directly at their command structure. That's suicide, Reeves objected. Not necessarily, Captain Novak countered. A precisely targeted strike could work. Hit their command and control, expose their crimes to the galactic community. What crimes? Marcus asked bitterly. The consortium controls the Galactic Council. They make the laws. Technically, they haven't broken any. Then we change the game, Lyra said firmly. Lieutenant Hayes, your team found their operational directives. Did you also find their communication protocols? Hayes nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Yes, Captain. We have full access to their secure channels. Excellent. We're going to invite some witnesses to Vega Prime. Representatives from every independent system in the galaxy. Let them see firsthand what the consortium is doing. The consortium won't allow that, Reeves warned. They won't have a choice, Lyra replied, because we're going to be there first, with evidence they can't deny and firepower they can't ignore. Over the next week, the plan took shape. More UEC ships arrived, bringing the fleet to 27 vessels. But more importantly, ships from other independent worlds began to appear, races that had also evolved on death worlds or harsh environments, species that had remained outside consortium control. The Drakari, reptilian warriors from a high-radiation world, brought their heavily armored dreadnoughts. The Ursine Kovari, evolved under crushing gravity, arrived with massive battle platforms. Even the insectoid Terraki, normally isolationist, sent a contingent of their high ships. On the eve of their departure for Vega Prime, Lyra stood in the Stormbreaker's observation deck, watching as the Allied fleet assembled. Ships of wildly different designs formed up around the human vessels, united by a common purpose. Quite a sight, Marcus said, joining her at the viewport. I never expected this, Lyra admitted. When we intercepted that distress call, I thought we were on our own. Turns out we're not the only ones who've been watching the consortium's expansion with concern. The Deathworlders have been waiting for someone to take the first step. And the cost? Lyra asked quietly. Marcus didn't pretend to misunderstand. Earth Command is still debating how to respond officially. The colonial governments have already voted to support our action. As for the consortium, they'll fight. People will die tomorrow. People are already dying, Lyra replied. The difference is, now someone is fighting back for them. The next morning, the fleet made the jump to Vega Prime. They emerged from warp space in perfect formation, immediately jamming all outgoing communications from the consortium headquarters. Consortium Defense Fleet is mobilizing, Ravi reported as alarms blared across the bridge. 87 vessels, moving to intercept. All ships, maintain formation, Lyra ordered. Deploy the evidence drones. Hundreds of small, unmanned craft shot forward from the Allied fleet, each broadcasting the evidence of the consortium's crimes, unedited footage from Neridia and dozens of other worlds, internal consortium directives detailing the systematic exploitation, medical records showing the deliberate working to death of inefficient species. The independent observers are emerging from warp, Jun announced. 17 diplomatic vessels, holding position at the agreed coordinates. Make sure they're receiving the evidence feeds, Lyra ordered. All ships, defensive posture only. We're not here to start a war if we can avoid it. The consortium fleet hesitated, caught between defending their headquarters and preventing the diplomatic vessels from witnessing their operations. We're being hailed, Jun said. It's the consortium high command. The view screen activated to show a stern-faced official in an ornate uniform. This is High Commissioner Velis of the Galactic Consortium. You are in violation of multiple galactic statutes. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or face immediate destruction. Lyra stood, facing the screen with calm resolve. This is Captain Lyra Chen of the United Earth Command vessel Stormbreaker. We are here in defense of the 43 species your organization is systematically exploiting to death. The evidence has already been transmitted to every independent system in the galaxy. You have no authority, Velis began. We have the authority of those who will not stand by while the weak are destroyed, Lyra interrupted. Your legal exploitation ends today. You have two choices. Stand down and agree to independent oversight of all consortium operations, or face the combined might of the worlds you deemed too dangerous to control. Velis's face contorted with rage. You Deathworlders have always been a plague on civilized space. You know nothing of the greater order we maintain. We know enough, Lyra replied evenly. We know that true civilization protects its most vulnerable. We know that strength means nothing if it isn't used to defend those who cannot defend themselves. She leaned forward, her voice carrying the determination of her entire species. You called us Deathworlders like it was something to be ashamed of. You never understood what it meant. We survived the harshest conditions our worlds could create. We evolved to endure, to adapt, to overcome. And now we're going to use that strength for something you can't comprehend. Justice. This is war, Velis snarled. Only if you choose it, Lyra replied. Your ships are outmatched. Your crimes are exposed. The independent systems are watching. What happens next is your decision. For a long moment, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Then, slowly, the consortium fleet began powering down their weapons. High Commissioner, a voice called from off-screen. The council representatives are demanding explanations. They've seen the evidence. Velis's face went blank. This isn't over, he said, before the transmission cut. Status? Lyra asked. Consortium fleet is standing down, Ravi reported, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. The diplomatic vessels are requesting permission to dock with the consortium headquarters. The evidence drones? Lyra asked. Still transmitting to every system in range, Jun confirmed. The consortium can't stop the signal now. It's done. Lyra exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the past weeks. No, it's just beginning. In the days that followed, the Galactic Council, for the first time operating without consortium control, established an emergency oversight committee. The exploited species were given immediate protection under a newly formed Deathworlder Protection Alliance. As the Stormbreaker prepared to depart Vega Prime, Ilara and a delegation of Meridians came to the observation deck for a final meeting with Captain Chen. "My people have a saying," Ilara said, her crystalline voice filling the room. "The gentlest breeze, persistent, can eventually wear away the mountain. We always believed patience would save us." She looked up at Lyra with multifaceted eyes that reflected the starlight. "We were wrong. Sometimes the mountain needs to face the storm." "The storm is just beginning," Lyra warned. "The consortium won't change overnight. There will be resistance, maybe even conflict." "But not silence," Ilara replied. "Never again silence." She extended her delicate hands, offering a small crystal that glowed with an inner light. "This is our highest honor, a memory crystal containing the collective gratitude of our people. When the weight of your strength becomes too much to bear, look into it and remember why Deathworlders are necessary in this galaxy." As Lyra accepted the gift, she felt its warmth against her palm, a reminder that strength without compassion was merely brutality, but strength guided by justice could reshape worlds. Beyond the viewport, the combined fleet of Deathworlder ships maintained their vigilant formation around Vega Prime, a promise and a warning written in steel and determination. The weakest species in the galaxy could finally breathe freely, protected by those who had evolved in the harshest conditions the universe could create.